Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
Good Wednesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 29th of December. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information on weather.gov/Alaska. Give us a call on the weather info line at 800-472-0391. And during the day and in just the last few minutes or so, you'll continue to find more information on social media, whether that's on Facebook at NWS Alaska, on Twitter at NWS Alaska, or our local accounts at NWS Fairbanks, NWS Anchorage, or NWS Juneau, and all of which are using the hashtag AKwx. And thank you to those of you who have talked and communicated with us by sharing pictures and storm reports and sharing our information by watching and using that hashtag AKwx. Again, tells us you're talking about Alaska weather. On YouTube, you'll get your daily afternoon map briefing, of course, and sometimes we'll see the interviews from people like Eric Stevens up at Gina and Fairbanks that have shared their love of weather and technology and satellites and so much more with us. You can find some of those videos there on our YouTube channel at NWS Anchorage. NWS Anchorage is the place to go for YouTube. Now, record temperatures. If you're in Fairbanks today and you were peeling off layers left and right, it was hot. It was 45 degrees. That's almost summer-like, right? The old record for this day was 35. That was set back in 1982. And it's only been 45 degrees or warmer 8 times in December in history that we've got recorded down in the weather logs, including 5 in a row. That was back in 1934 when there was a pretty strong Chinook event, probably something very similar to what happened today. But only 8 times in total weather history that we have that it's been 45 degrees or warmer. So on the scale of unusual, it's pretty unusual stuff. On top of that, we set a record here in Anchorage at 45 degrees today. That was a new record high temperature. So yes, downsloping warming winds coming off the mountains have dramatic effects on temperature. It's still wintertime. It's probably short-lived, but you know, if you enjoyed that, there you go. It does make a mess of the roads though, doesn't it? And ski hills and skating rinks and not so great. Here's a look at the hazardous weather conditions as we go into tonight. Obviously, we're still having problems from wind and precipitation, and wind and precipitation combined together. So let's just go around the horn here as we look at the Haines and Klondike Highway area. That is a winter storm warning. We are expecting that area to see about 3 to 7 inches of snow. That will start up tomorrow morning at 6 and go until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you've got travel plans that take you up into the higher terrain of the passes there, the Haines and Klondike highways, that is a winter storm warning that starts tomorrow morning. Now for the Copper River Basin, we're looking at a winter weather advisory there. That is going to bring some additional light snow amounts, mainly north of the Glen Highway and west of Paxton. You're looking for light snow, but also some of that will be blowing around 4 to 8 inches of snow in those areas, again, north of the Glen Highway and west of Paxton. For the Western Kenai Peninsula, small stream flood advisories there for the Anchor River. And you look northward up around the Alaska Range and the Deltana and Tanana Flats region, those are wind advisories, and we're still expecting some strong southerlies that could gust upwards of 60 miles per hour. The same is true as you head north of Fairbanks and, well, that's too bad. I messed that up. Sorry about that. North of Fairbanks, we'll just cover it this way. We're still talking about the western areas of the Yukon Flats and out into the central interior. A wind advisory there for strong southerlies gusting up to 60 miles per hour. And we have high surf conditions that'll continue around the Kuskokwim Delta region and the coastline. That will continue until about 9 o'clock tonight, already looking like a lot of that is easing up. Now, as you head out to the west, winter weather advisories for the lower and the upper Yukon valleys there Many areas there still looking at wind and some light snow amounts. Look for those advisories to continue through the night. And a winter storm warning for the Bering Sea coast and areas around the St. Lawrence Island coast. We're looking at conditions there that will continue to produce poor visibility as well as some light accumulations. Anything from this point onward, probably only about an inch of snow. So we're still talking about high winds and snow around parts of the Norton Sound coastline. That will continue through the evening hours. A lot of things should improve as we get into the overnight and early morning hours of tomorrow, and the threat will continue to kind of fan out a little bit more and ease up in intensity as the storm system is going. Well, let's talk about what's happened here. We've got an area of low pressure that we were talking about yesterday with Dave Percy as he was describing that moving up across south and western Alaska. You can now see that center of circulation moving through the Bristol Bay region and then zipping northward to west of Norton Sound and heading for St. Lawrence Island. As that continues working northward, this is pulling up a pretty large mass of very warm air across western southwestern Alaska. And then we have this really sharp boundary right here. This is actually what's left of the front. It's starting to fall apart now, and you'll see that on the surface charts here in just a few minutes. But for the moment, southeast has kind of been spared some of this moisture and certainly some of the wind. But this boundary is slowly going to creep eastward, and as it does so, it should lose some of its intensity, but it is eventually going to point some of that wind and rain eastward. Now, it won't be the full onslaught of wind that many locations in southwest and south central have seen over the last 24 hours. Some peak gusts around south central ranged from about 70 to 80 miles per hour around the Turnagain Arm area to as high as about 116, a measured gust around the Arctic Valley area, and immediately after it looks like that sensor took a break for a while. Out across south and western Alaska and Cape Newenham, some areas there saw gusts upwards of 80 to 90 miles per hour. So all that information that we were sharing with you yesterday on Facebook, if you got a chance to look at that, and the warnings and watches and advisories that we were sharing yesterday, all of that information, if you have an opportunity to connect with us on those accounts and have ways to get weather information, you should have known about that storm a good 24 to 48 hours in advance at least. So again, it's very important to stay abreast of developing situations around Alaska when we have this type of weather moving in, and hopefully you receive that information well. Now, as we look at the satellite picture here, again, you can see a lot of moisture is tapped all the way into the southern reaches of the central Pacific. This is a pretty healthy southerly flow, and the overall weather pattern that we're looking at here doesn't really change very much over the next week to week and a half. So we're still going to see weather events like this play out. Now, the next one is slated to arrive sometime Thursday night and into Friday, and you'll see that on the charts again, kind of following almost exactly the same path. The good news is this is not going to be as intense, it looks like right now anyway, as we head into Friday. There's another one coming early next week. This moisture is working northward. It will continue to bring snow showers, and sometimes some of this could be heavier than normal, maybe even widespread across some of the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. We're also going to see more snow and wind across the west and southwestern coast as low pressure follows pretty much the same old path. Out across the west, rain and snow showers will be commonplace for the central and western chain. A better chance for snow in the west as we've seen today. Low pressure this afternoon down to 956 millibars there. That's east of St. Matthew and west of Amonach. Warmer air lifting northward, creating snow and blowing snow for parts of the Kotzebue Sound region, and snow is falling on the southern facing slopes closer to Bettles and southward toward Ambler. As you look at the frontal boundary across the Gulf, this is lifting northward. Not a whole lot of precipitation across southeast today. High pressure is more in charge of your weather picture at 1038. The front is dying off as we head through tonight. Pockets of rainfall across Prince William Sound, the Kenai Peninsula, and Anchorage. That is rainfall, just like we had last night. Pretty impressive stuff. South and west, periods of rain and snow are expected. Snow and blowing snow for the Kotzebue Sound region and Seward Peninsula, with warmer air lifting northward, and pockets of rain and snow across the central and western chain. With the frontal boundary located out to the west, that starts to fall apart. Warmer air is lifting northward into the Chukchi Sea. And here's our next system for Thursday. We have a trough in advance of that across the eastern Gulf. That's moving towards southeast, bringing rain to places like Juneau and snow to the higher terrain. And then our next front is moving across the central and western Gulf. That will bring more precipitation into Kodiak Island and southwestern Alaska ahead of it. And then as we get into Friday, that zips northward once again across Kodiak Island into the Kenai Peninsula, bringing more wind to Prince William Sound and the Cook Inlet region. Snow showers will be possible as we head into New Year's Day. A mixture of rain and snow for many of the lower elevation areas of the Kenai Peninsula. So watch for changes throughout the day there. Rain and snow for southwestern Alaska. And again, that's a 955 millimeter millibar low. That's going to bring some wind to parts of the Alaska Peninsula, southwest, south central, and Prince William Sound. And you'll notice the pressure gradients tightening up here across southeast. Here's the high. There's the low, and there's also another wave of low pressure up north. This is going to equalize again across the interior of southeast and across the outer coast. A lot of this wind will be out across the open water, but that is going to disrupt things and probably cause some pretty good swells, if not some high seas across the eastern Gulf. So watch for changes there if you're in southeast. Snow showers continue across the interior and across the Chukchi Seacoast with colder air trying to get its act together up north, but we're still going to be in the southerly flow as we go through the weekend. And as I said, another wave comes up our way Monday and Tuesday. Temperatures today, 30s and 40s, even some 20s across the interior around, looks like Petersburg and areas northward saw some cooler weather there. Ketchikan into the upper 30s, and then you see a pretty sharp contrast in temperatures across the Lynn Canal. Yakutat was 38, Prince William Sound in the 30s and 40s. Anchorage again made a record high of 45, and so did Fairbanks, cooling down quickly though late afternoon. 29 around Eagle today, 9 in Fort Yukon, and temperatures on the North Slope hit and miss. Everyone was at or just about zero. Looks like Kaktovik was 1 above, 13 below in Barrow. Kotzebue Sound temperatures in the 30s today, 30 in Shishmaref, 34 in Nome, 44 in Galena. McGrath was at 43 again with some wind in the area, 35 around Bethel today. And windy conditions across southwest. Conditions will continue to improve through the afternoon. Lower 40s for Kodiak Island, 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, Sandpoint nearly 40, and mid 30s for the Pribilofs with 34 in Adak and 30 out around Attu. Overnight low temperatures in the lower 30s, above freezing for many in south central, and again rain is possible, 37 in Kodiak. Mid to upper 30s for southeast, single-digit temps from Fort Yukon southward, even warmer into Fairbanks at 25, 1 below in Arctic Village, 11 below in Barrow, 29 in Nome with temps in the southwest below freezing, but not by much, and lower to mid-30s for the chain in the Alaska Peninsula with highs tomorrow at 38 in St. Paul, lower 30s for Bethel, 31 in Nome. Temps up to 2 above in Barrow, so above zero there, 22 in Fort Yukon, mid-30s, even at or above freezing for the middle parts of the interior, including the Tanana Valley. Impressive stuff there, and low to mid-30s, warm up even more for the Susitna Valley, and upper 30s for south central and the Kenai Peninsula and Anchorage, 38 in Kodiak, and low to mid-40s, in fact, for southeast for your Thursday, last day of 2015. IFR conditions expected around the northern passes for southeast and around Prince William Sound and across the Alaska Range and some of the northern passes northward toward the interior. MVFR conditions as you head north out of Fairbanks, and then IFR for a large chunk of the northern Bering Sea coast and the Yukon Delta. And Aktivik Pass expected to see improvements throughout the day toward VFR. Same goes for Adigan Pass. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass should quickly flip over to IFR with more snow developing there. We expect similar conditions in Rainy Pass and Windy Pass. Windy Pass gets a start out at MVFR though. Look for Isabel Pass to hold at IFR conditions through most of the day. Mentasta Pass leaning over to MVFR throughout your Thursday. Tanita Pass holds at marginal conditions. Portage Pass probably quickly returns to IFR if it ever gets to a little bit of a break in the morning. That will happen on the eastern side. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect IFR. The warm air aloft is surging across the eastern Gulf. No surprise, levels are up to 8,000 feet with the strength of the system. And across the northern parts of Canada, levels there also showing warmer air spreading across the Arctic regions. Icing potential will be increasing above 2,000 feet across the Copper River Basin of the south central region, and a large part of southeast, maybe as high as 6,000 feet. They're above 4,000 feet in the west for some light to isolated moderate icing threats there. A ridge of high pressure is controlling the Pacific Northwest, and that means our low pressure system here just digs in and provides a very deep southerly flow. This is a pattern that is not going to move quickly. We've talked about omegablocks before. This indeed forms that Greek letter omega, and that is a sticky pattern that does not like to budge easily at all. Southerly flow ramps up across the Gulf of Alaska once again. Wind speeds climbing to 40 to 50 knots out across the open water and starting to speed up across southeast as well tomorrow. Westerlies across the North Slope, 20 to 25. Southerlies for the west coast and northerlies for the far western reaches of the chain. You can see at 3,000 feet, wind speeds also picking up here to 50 to even 65 knots south and west of Kodiak. Southerlies remain strong across the Alaska Range, 50 to 55, and light winds across the North Slope and the Brooks Range, thankfully, around 10 knots there from east to west. Turbulence potential should be on the increase across most of the coastal areas of southeast below 6,000 feet. Opportunities for severe turbulence there as we see the system shift eastward and north. Again, a lot of folks reporting chop and wind shear today. Occasional moderate across the interior across the Alcan border and in parts of Prince William Sound and the northern sections of Cook Inlet below 4,000, and also developing areas there across the chain with the next weather system. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
Become familiar with the correct use and adjustment of your lap belt and shoulder harness. Adjust the lap belt so that it rests snugly across your hips, and then adjust your shoulder harness so that it is also snug. But make sure that the shoulder harness does not lift the lap belt from its proper position. If a single shoulder harness is used, it should extend across the torso for maximum effectiveness. In the case of emergency, the proper position for all occupants in the helicopter is the full upright position against the seat back. You should also become familiar with the Aircraft Intercom Systems, or ICS, for use during flight. You will need to note the location of the fire extinguisher, the ELT, or Emergency Locator Transmitter, the first aid kit, and extra survival gear. The location of these items will vary with different helicopter makes, as will the seatbelt mechanisms and door latches. Always get a thorough safety briefing for the type of aircraft that you are flying in. And if there is anything that you are unfamiliar with, please ask the helicopter manager before continuing your project or flight. During flight, the pilot is in charge of the aircraft and will give any instructions that you might need in case of an emergency. During the flight, you will be able to speak to the pilot or other passengers over the intercom system. But when the pilot or helicopter manager are making radio calls or during takeoff and landing, passengers should refrain from using the intercom system. Always make sure that all your personal items are secure in the cabin and clear from the controls and instrument panel. Also watch for any flight hazards, such as other aircraft, birds, or ground hazards while in flight. Never assume that a hazard has been seen by the pilot. It is the job of the pilot and helicopter manager to determine the suitability of a landing site. However, you will probably take an active role in selecting areas and preparing landing sites. These off-site landing areas pose one of the greatest risks in helicopter operations due to the variable hazards involved. There are 4 factors involved in selecting a landing area. The first consideration is the size of the landing zone. Make sure that the landing zone and touchdown area are adequate for the model of helicopter you're using. Second, the landing area needs to be level with a clear approach and departure path. This path should allow passengers to board and depart the helicopter on the downhill slope in full view of the pilot. The third factor is the helicopter approach and departure path. There needs to be adequate clearance from obstacles for the helicopter to make a normal approach and departure from the landing zone while considering expected winds. The fourth factor is wind direction. The helicopter approach and landing should be into the wind. It's a good idea to tie pieces of flagging to small trees or shrubs near the landing area. This will give an indication of wind direction to the pilot on approach. You can also give a radio call to the crew with this information and let the pilot know if there are gusty or erratic winds. Remember to stand at the upwind side of the landing area with your back to the wind as a final reference for the pilot. Most off-site landing areas need some improvements to eliminate obstructions. The helicopter manager is trained to use chainsaws and can clear unimproved areas to meet agency guidelines. It's a good idea to keep the forest helicopter specialist and managers informed about future work sites that may need landing area improvements. Sites needing only minimal work can be improved by crews using hand tools. Special operations cover a wide variety of missions. Your involvement with the planning and performance of the job are very important. The helicopter manager will let you know what duties you will perform. It is important to remember in sling operations that only qualified aviation personnel will attach and unhook loads. For your own safety, plan for the unexpected. If bad weather comes in suddenly, you may have to choose an alternate pickup site. In this case, you may have to improve the site and guide the aircraft to your location. You can help the aircrew find your location by using your radio and giving your position in relation to the helicopter. You can do this by simply using the 12-hour clock technique. In this example, you would tell the pilot that you are at 9 o'clock. And wearing the highly visible orange flight suit will also help the aircrew find you easily. Your Forest helicopter staff is making every effort to provide you with the safest and most efficient resource to help you meet your transportation needs. You can help us by becoming an active participant in the Region Aviation Safety Program. You can work with air crews in the planning process and provide options to allow for changing weather conditions. Have a plan for alternate projects so that bad weather won't spoil your day. By taking responsibility for your own safety and survival needs, your efforts will prevent incidents and prepare you for the unexpected.
Look for stronger winds tomorrow across coastal areas of southeast, up to 50 knots there south of Sitka with a 24-foot sea. A little bit further south, the winds diminish just a bit. The inner channel is also looking at higher winds, 30 to 35 knots, with seas ranging from 6 to 7 feet on the inside, up to 27 feet from Icy Cape to Cape Fairweather tomorrow, south of Yakutat, 40 knots with a 27-foot sea. Winds will diminish across the outer coast on Friday. Southeast, though, still going stronger, 40 to 45 knots outside and 20 to 35 knots on the inside. Across Clarence Strait, 35 knots with a 5-foot sea. And again, higher gusts will still be a part of your day as we start the new year. Across South Central, look for easterlies coming out of the northern Cook Inlet, 20 knots there with a 5-foot sea. Southerlies a little bit further southwest of the Barrens. And for Shelikof Strait, seas there 8 to 9 feet on a 30-knot southerly wind. Southerlies all at 30 knots across the north and western Gulf, and inside of Prince William Sound still at 30 knots with a 6-foot sea. Look for those to pick up from the east. On Friday, the New Year Day, 7-foot seas are expected inside, 20 to 23-foot seas across the north and western Gulf as winds and seas pick up there. Look for higher gusts, especially outside of Copper River Basin with a stronger easterly flow. North and easterly winds coming down Cook Inlet at 30 to 35 and west of the Barrens 40 knots with an 11-foot sea. That trend will continue inside of Shelikof Strait there with a southeasterly wind coming into Kodiak Island at 22 feet for the seas there. Bristol Bay on Thursday, a southwesterly flow at 20 knots with a 5-foot sea. Look for more of a southerly flow heading down the Bering Sea coast. South and easterly winds for the Pacific coast at 30 knots with a 13 to 15-foot sea. Look for the seas to come up even more on Friday from Castle Cape to Chignik. Southeasterly flow up to 40 knots with northeasterlies coming out of Bristol Bay at 35. Look for 10-foot seas there and northwesterlies across areas from Sand Point to King Cove and False Pass. with a 16-foot sea across the Pacific coast. For the Aleutians, a west and southwesterly flow on Thursday. Southerlies light south of Unalaska and Nikolsky. Looking for southwesterlies north of Adak and Atka. 10-foot seas expected there. Northwesterlies from Kiska to Attu on a 35-knot wind. 16-foot seas there for Friday. About the same for Friday as you look in the west, and you'll notice a little bit of a shift across the Pacific coast. A little more westerly, 25 to 35 with 14-foot seas there. Northwesterlies from Unalaska to Adak, 25 to 30 knots there, also from the north and west. As we look at Thursday across the west coast, offshore winds from Hooper Bay to Macquarie, 25 knots with a 5-foot sea. Southeasterlies coming into St. Lawrence Island. Southerlies for the Kuskokwim Delta, as well as St. Paul and St. George with a 6-foot sea expected there for Friday, New Year's Day. Northeasterlies coming out of the Kuskokwim Delta with an 8-foot sea on a 30-knot wind. Northerlies for the Pribilofs and southeasterlies diminish for St. Lawrence Island at 15 knots. Easterlies also at 15 for St. Matthew. Light easterly winds for the Beaufort Seacoast. Stronger north and easterly winds for the Chukchi Seacoast, 25 to 30 knots, and 30 coming out of the Kotzebue Sound region from the south and east. For Friday, winds diminish there on a southerly note. East and southeasterlies also slowing down for the Beaufort Seacoast. Light winds across Point Barrow from the east with a 5-knot wind, and northeasterlies coming down the Chukchi Seacoast at 10 to 15 knots for New Year's Day. Recapping your weather, it's still a busy night for a large part of the western sections of Alaska. Wind and snow combined around Norton Sound and Seward Peninsula, and in some cases there may be very poor visibility. Look for blizzard conditions around St. Lawrence Island and the western tip of the Seward Peninsula for a little while longer tonight. Winds will still be gusty across the eastern Alaska Range, the Deltana Flats and Tanana region. Looking for winds there out of the south, perhaps as strong as 60 miles per hour, also across the central interior, including Tanana. Periods of rain may be possible across south central, Prince William Sound, and northern sections of southeast tonight and again tomorrow. Look for that to mix in with snow as we head into Thursday and Friday across south central. Winds will ease up across the west, but snow showers may remain. Another surge of warm and windy air coming up across south central, Kodiak Island, and southwest as we head into New Year's Day, so be careful and be prepared for that. More snow across the northern parts of the passes in southeast, and have a happy new year.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
If you're a rural Alaskan resident, consider applying for a seat on one of the Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Councils by Friday, January 29, 2016. Applicants who have knowledge of the regional subsistence uses, customs, and traditions are needed. Council meetings serve as a forum for regional public involvement in subsistence management. Information at 1-800-478-1456 or email subsistence@fws.gov.